Hey guys, it's Mrs. Biades. I am going to go through with you guys the 8-4 Early Empire notes. And before I do that, I just want to briefly review what you guys learned last week in your Ed Puzzle video on the end of the Republic. So, as we recall, there were three consuls that were in power: Pompey, Caesar, Crassus. Crassus dies, that leaves Pompey and Caesar in power. They struggle to gain more power, and Pompey goes back to Rome with his army. He decides he really wants more power, and he's afraid that Caesar's getting too powerful. So Caesar, who is up with his army fighting in the north of Italy in Gaul, which is present day France, he finds out that Pompey does not want him in the Senate, do not want him coming back to Rome. So he makes the decision to cross the Rubicon River, which is at that northern part of Italy, back into Italy, into going into Rome. And when he does, he realizes that he starts a civil war. He ends up winning the war. The Senate is pretty much afraid of him because they know how powerful he is, so they declare him to be dictator for life. That is the end of the Republic. Once he is dictator for life, there is no more Republic. There's no more voting in. So he becomes very popular, especially among the poor people. Basically, everybody liked him but the Senate, but the poor people really liked him. He gave them a lot of things. He gave them some more rights. He gave them gladiator fights. So he did all kinds of stuff for them, entertainment, things like that. The Senate gets extremely concerned that he is becoming way too powerful. So they stab Caesar 23 times. So he is stabbed by his own Senate. So after that, Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew, he becomes ruler. He changes his name to Augustus, which means majestic one. He ends up extending a lot of land, and he becomes the first emperor of Rome. So he is the first emperor of Rome. So that's where we ended off. Right here, you see a picture of the Roman Forum. This forum, guys, is very similar, I guess, to the Agora in Greece. You would see people having meetings and debates here, and somewhat of a marketplace. Our two essential questions: what period of Roman history started with the reign of Augustus, and what were some of the important technological developments? So, picking up where we left off, the Emperor Augustus. He is going to start what is referred to as the Pax Romana. The Pax Romana is Latin for Roman peace. It is 200 years of peace and prosperity that starts with Augustus. Obviously, he doesn't live for 200 years, guys, so he doesn't finish it, but he is the start of the Pax Romana. Prosperity means growth, whether it means they're growing economically, or maybe their land is growing. It's both in this case. So it is a time of peace and prosperity. His achievements. One of his achievements, he expands the empire. He goes east, west, north, and south. So he's expanding the Roman Empire even more. He builds beautiful, splendid palaces and fountains in public buildings. We're going to start seeing a lot more advanced plumbing coming in to get the water to these fountains. He builds a permanent professional army, and he creates a special guard called the Praetorian Guard to guard him. Chances are he realizes after seeing what happened to Caesar that he needs someone to protect him. This Praetorian Guard sort of reminds me of the immortals that we talked about in the Persian Empire, where they were guarding the immortals were guarding their king. The Praetorian Guard is guarding Augustus. He is going to appoint a governor for each province. Again, makes sense. Their empire is becoming so big that they need someone to run each area. So he's going to appoint a governor for each province. He will replace politicians appointed by the Senate. Again, a pretty good idea on his part, because chances are those politicians were not being very loyal. They certainly weren't loyal to Julius Caesar if they killed him. So he's going to replace politicians appointed by the Senate. He is going to reform the tax system by appointing tax collectors. This way he knows people are going to pay their taxes, and that will give wealth to the empire. And he is also going to create the first fire department. Um, this one's a little iffy because we also have this under Crassus, so we'll have to look that one up and see who's really responsible for doing that. But we have it in our notes that Augustus is responsible for it. And he creates there's something that the fire department is called the this watchman of the city, this vigilus urbani, also Latin, where it's watchman of the city. Next, we have our Julio-Claudian emperors. So after Augustus dies, there is sort of this dynasty of emperors that we go through. Some are good, some are not so good. We first start with Tiberius. So Tiberius, guys, was he was a great military leader. He is going to keep Rome's economy stable. So he's not gonna drain it poor. He's not gonna gain too much money. He's just going to keep it stable so that empire seems to be where it needs to be. Then we have our next one named Caligula. Caligula means little army boots. He was definitely an interesting ruler, guys. He got rid of the sales tax. He's going to allow people in exile to return. Um, he did have some financial difficulties during his time. And even though the economy was not stable during his ruling, he still managed to build projects. He was also seen as not the nicest ruler. He was actually pretty cruel. Eventually, so here we go. He was mentally ill. He could be very violent and cruel. Eventually, he's actually assassinated by his own Praetorian Guard and the senators. So clearly, they did not trust him, and his mental illness must have gotten the best of him. One really crazy thing he did was he actually made his horse consul. So if we remember what consuls are, guys, they're the people that, are help with the laws, creating the laws, enforcing these laws. He's going to make his horse one of them. So there was definitely some mental illness involved with Caligula. Our next one is Claudius. So Claudius did a lot of good things, guys. He constructed roads, he constructed aqueducts and canals throughout the entire empire. He built a harbor in Ostia. He's also going to be responsible for conquering Britain. So he actually is a really good Julio-Claudian emperor and does a lot of good things for Rome. And our last one is someone by the name of Nero. Nero was a little bit like Caligula, guys. He was a little off, let's just say. He did build a lot of new buildings, which is great. However, he was very cruel and very violent. He was known to have killed his wife, his mother. I think maybe it was his stepbrother or something. But he killed a lot of people. He was very into poetry and theater and music. He liked to act. He liked to be part of the plays. He liked to play his music for people. And this was actually something that people in Rome did not think you should be doing. His Senate did not agree with that. It was not his civil duty to be in theater. His job was to be the emperor and to rule Rome. So they did not like that he was doing these type of things. They also thought that he was responsible. So he was a great actor. He was a very good actor. And according to legend here, guys, there was a legend that said he was playing the fiddle while Rome burned and he built a palace on the rubble. So just to sort of give you a little information and a little background on that, there was a terrible, terrible fire in Rome that burnt through most of the city. And some people actually believe that he was responsible for burning down the city because they thought that he wanted to reconstruct it to make it look more Greek-like, which would have been in his taste. And they know that that's what he wanted. He wanted this Greek fashion. So they believed he was responsible. There's no proof to that, but people believe that. And people also believe, according to this legend, that he actually was playing the fiddle while Rome was burning, and clearly wasn't upset about it. Eventually, he is declared pretty much public enemy number one of the Senate, and the Senate does not like him. He actually ends up killing himself around 68 CE, current era, and he ends up killing himself by driving a knife into him. So he is the first emperor ever to commit suicide. And there's Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and finally Nero. So next we have some more time of sort of this unity and prosperity. And our next person here is Vespasian. And Vespasian, guys, he is going to restore order to the empire. Things are not great after Nero, so he's going to start restoring order to the empire. He is going to put down rebellions that start. He has his son working as well, Titus, and he's going to order his son Titus to stop the Jewish rebellion in Jerusalem. So if we go way back to when we were studying Israel, the Jews were rebelling against the Romans, and so he sends Titus to stop the rebellion, and this is when Titus has the Temple of Solomon completely destroyed. It's never rebuilt after this. This is the second time this has happened. It's never going to be rebuilt, and this is when all we see left is the Western Wall. So the Western Wall is still there, but that was during the time of Vespasian and Titus. He is also, and probably most well known for building the Colosseum. So Vespasian, he names it originally. It's also known as the Flavian Amphitheater, but it's named after his family, and he is most well known for having this built. And we're going to learn a lot more about this, guys. There's going to be other videos on this, but basically what the Colosseum was built for was entertainment. They would have animal fights in here, gladiator fights, chariot races, all kinds of things that were in this. And you can see originally it was built in this circle, and eventually, and it used to have a canopy top over it. But now you can just see that it's deteriorating, but people still do go visit it. We'll watch that video later so you guys can get some more information on that. All right, so Mount Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii. So Pompeii, guys, is a very wealthy town commonly visited by vacationing Romans. And in 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius, this volcano, erupts and it destroys the city, and it buries it under 9 feet of volcanic ash. 9 feet. That's probably from all the way to the ceiling if you're in one of our classrooms, maybe a little bit higher. So imagine that volcanic ash has just completely covered everything all the way up to the ceilings in your classroom. And unfortunately, there was not a lot of warning. So much of the city, many people died, and the city and inhabitants were preserved. The reason they were preserved was because this volcanic ash sort of just came on top of them, it suffocated them, and then it sort of molded them so that years and years and years later, people started excavating and digging, and they would find things exactly how it was left. We're going to watch a video on this too, so you'll learn a little bit more about the destruction and what happens on that as well. But here you can see Pompeii. Here's where it's located. Mount Vesuvius was right here, not very far from there. So it is going to just completely destroy the entire city, the whole city. These are some of the artifacts that were actually found that were still intact. Here you see some painting. Here are the molds of 2 bodies It looks like this person may have even been trying to protect this person. And here we even see a dog that had been burned, and then that's the mold from it. Here's some more pictures of some of the artifacts that were found. And this was displayed, I believe this might have been the one in the Museum of Science. Um, if it ever comes back, it's not here now, but if they ever bring the this Pompeii, um, sorry guys, I'm lacking in my words here. My word retrieval's off, but if they ever bring this back, I would definitely recommend you guys go see it. That looks like it's a pig. And then you can see some bodies here too. Okay. Next, going into what were referred to as the good emperors. And I'm going to kind of go through this quickly, guys. 5 rulers from 96 AD to 180 AD, which is also referred to as CE now, current era. They ruled well and they helped Rome flourish. So they were named Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. Under Trajan, Rome is going to reach its largest size. It's going to go all the way through England, and Trajan is going to create the largest part of the empire. Hadrian, however, is going to stop the growth of the empire. He's going to limit the size. He starts to realize it is way too big. It's going to become too hard to handle. The empire is getting too big and it's going to become too hard to control. So he builds what is referred to as Hadrian's Wall in this northern part right here in northern Britain. And that is going to mark the northernmost point of the empire. And here is the wall. So that's going to sort of be the border. This is as far as the Roman Empire goes. He's marking it down. And last but not least, we're going to talk very quickly about Roman ingenuity. Ingenuity means kind of cleverness, guys. It means inventions. First and foremost, we have the aqueducts, human-made water channels for carrying water long distances. This is going to supply water for the hundreds of fountains in Rome. This is what they looked like. And their water is going to go through this system. They're going to have a piping system that goes through here, and it's going to carry the water into fountains like this that are in the middle of Rome. Here you can see how they do it. So here's a reservoir. It intakes the water, comes through here, goes through your aqueduct bridge and down into the city. And this is a modern way. They're a little bit different now, guys, because they go underneath the ground. And then they're in a treatment plant so that they purify the water and go through. This is another fountain, not ancient, but very cool looking. Then we have the arch. This is a type of architecture, guys. So they use this curved structure and it spans a space while supporting weight. So here are the different parts of your arch. You can see they were used all over the Colosseum. This is called the Arc de Triomphe, which is in France. So you can see they have used the idea of the Roman idea, and you can see them in a lot of churches, etc. So I look at this as sort of, this is their architectural contribution, kind of like the Greeks had the columns. Here you see more. They have vaults in there. And then, of course, one of their most important was roads. They had 50,000 miles of roads, lots and lots and lots of roads. They used them for trade and by the army to travel quickly. And we had talked about these in another lesson. So they're starting to have these kind of concrete looking or, gravel stone roads that are going to be easier for them to walk on. And it's going to connect their entire empire. and they're going to have this booming economy. They get goods from all over the empire, so they're going to be trading throughout everywhere in the world. It's going to flood right into Rome. Silk and spices from Asia, animals from Africa, tin from England, lead from Spain. The money is going to be used throughout the entire empire. By 100 CE or AD, merchants in Gaul are going to be able to use the same currencies as the traders in Mesopotamia. So they're going to have one form of currency so that they can all trade amongst the people in their empire. And so, even with this wonderful prosperity and growth, there's still a huge gap between the rich and the poor. And that is going to cause a lot of problems. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Hopefully, you'll get a lot out of that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let one of your history teachers know. Thank you for listening.